Zencaster is giving me the blues with the audio intros this morning, but if you're listening to this, I may just keep it because it sounded actually kind of cool. But hello, world. As you can tell from the title, we are back again doing something special. This is part 2 of our special crossover series with the Not Your Father's Movies podcast covering Richard Linklater's Before series. I'm your host, Sirr, and I love talking about movies. This is the place where I come to get my fix. You can follow the pod on whatever streaming service you are listening to, as well as YouTube, and you can follow me on Twitter at MyMovieFixPod. Today's episode, of course, is Before Sunset. My guest to help me get my fix is none other than Mr. Bright High, Mr. I messed it up. Mr. Brightside himself, Vito.
How you doing? That was gorgeous.
Side joke you at home don't appreciate, and I messed up. So great, Mr. Brightside Vito. Hello, how are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. I'm happy to be here representing the Dad Fathers, talking about these 3 devastating, gorgeous romantic movies, and excited to talk about, are they dad movies? We show them to our kids, and also get our fix talking about them because I don't know how well known they are. I don't know how well loved they are, but I know I've known them for a while, and they've been a big part of my life, and I've always wanted a chance to discuss them. So I'm really happy to be here on our show.
Indeed, special double crossover, quasi whatever episode. Yes. Jesse said the same thing last week. It's like I didn't know when I would get the opportunity to talk about this because I don't know if this is necessarily a dad movie, but I'm glad to have it. So I'm sure you listened to last week's episode. Glad you're back with us again. And since we're doing a special crossover episode, again, our topics will cross over. We are going to start with our recommendations, but again, since we're doing something special, we're going to recommend our romantic movies, say a rom-com, heartstring puller, chick flick, whatever you may, whatever your topic. We're going to recommend one of those type movies this week. Then we're going to go into our review portion, but we're going to start with our overall thoughts on our nostalgia for this movie, how we remember it, how we think of it. Then we are going to discuss whether this is a movie we're going to show our kids. We're going into the full review with, of course, a separate spoiler section, followed by the big question, is this a dad movie? Indeed. Of course, wrapping up, as we always do, with our parting gift, our send-off, something we recommend to you. But let's get the show started.
Can I ask you one question before we get ahead?
Certainly.
Were you there in Vienna in December? I just have to know.
I hope you watched the movie because, listeners, okay.
I'm just setting the stage. I'm drawing the curtain aside a little.
Indeed. All right, so let's get into it. Before we get to the actual movies, let's recommend something. That's why I wanted to make this a little special, because I'm a big hopeless romantic at heart, we'll get into that later, but so I'm a big romance movie fan, so I figured we could, instead of just sharing what we saw this week or just some random stuff, let's share some movie of that ilk that we recommend the people check out while we're talking about these other 3, romantic movies. What you got for us today, Vito?
I actually have one that was really important to me and my wife when we started dating, seeing each other at school. And I came across the movie and my wife came across the book. And when we sort of joined together, I don't really remember who saw the movie first, who read the book, but I know that she adored the story as much as I did. And it was one of the first times that we really encountered a piece of art that we both loved separately. And then we're like, oh, hey, you love that too? That's cool. It's this movie from 2010 called Never Let Me Go.
Interesting.
It's based on the Kazuo Ishiguro novel that my wife's a pretty big fan of his work. He also previously wrote Remains of the Day. And the screenplay is done by Alex Garland, who wrote like 28 Days Later, which we covered on the pod a little bit ago, and he's done stuff like Ex Machina and Annihilation. And this is a weird one for him. It's a weird one for everyone involved. But it stars Carey Mulligan, Keira Knightley, and Andrew Garfield. And there's some pretty spoilery stuff if you look into this movie. It's best approached your typical way, Sir, 100% unsullied. But
I'm Googling it as we speak, but I'll
be careful.
I'll limit myself to pictures.
The best way I can seek to describe this movie is Three gifted yet troubled and endangered individuals are stuck in a love triangle that takes place across their childhood and young adult lives as they grapple with a world where they are terrified of their purpose.
That sounds like a Wikipedia reading. Is that something you made up yourself?
I went as trying to be as vague as possible.
Okay. Yeah.
It's a drama. It's a romance. There's a little bit of sci-fi in here. It's very sad. It's very beautiful. It's very human, and when I think of my wife, I think of this movie a lot, and I think about the performances and the emotions inside of it. And I think about the early days of us dating, and I think it's a beautiful, very romantic, very good story that's told with a lot of feeling. So check it out if you haven't seen it. Never Let Me Go.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know how this one missed me by. I'm a, Keira Knightley. That's my secret, hall pass. That's my love. I don't know. So I don't know. She's normally nothing about that type just does it for me. But Keira Knightley, that's the one.
as I think as I might have shared on the Promising Young Woman episode, that's Carrie Mulligan for me. That's Carrie Mulligan for me and my wife. We're just like, Carrie's in it. All right, we're done. We're going for it. We got to see it. I can't resist when Carrie is on screen.
Yeah, Seeking a Friend for the End of the World is like one of my that's in my category of greats, and I don't know, it's like a quirky type love type story or whatever, but it's just having her in it's like, it just adds that little something. It's like that's it. It's in my top 10. It's in my top 10. So
that's a beautiful movie. That's a really gorgeous movie.
Yeah. I love PM Dawn because of it. I don't know. Okay, anyway, so my movie. So this one, I've got a top three. I don't know if Serendipity. I talked about that last week. I don't know if that's necessarily in my top three. It's in my top 10. It's one I love, but the two I'm choosing for this week and next week are my absolute, top two of two. This one here is for the longest time, if someone asked me what my favorite movie was, I told them this, and it's got history with me. It's like it's one of those like special movies for me. It is A Walk to Remember. The story is about it's pretty early in the movie you find out, but the story is about a bad boy, a troublemaking teen youth who does some bad boy stuff and gets sentenced to like community service type. No, not community. Well, he goes to a community service type center and meets is one of his classmates works there as well. She's the preacher's daughter, played by Mandy Moore. And they end up doing what these type of movies do. That came out entirely wrong. I'm just, it's a romance story.
They fall hopelessly in love.
Yes, but there's, an added twist in the movie that I don't even necessarily. It's not. I don't even know if I can call it a spoiler because you find out about halfway through and it's not necessarily fully about that. But I'm gonna leave it out anyway, just because I'm spoilerific. I mean, I'm anti-spoiler, so I want you to go into it without knowing it. But it was devastating. It rocked me, and the songs were beautiful. That's in my top two. It's Only Hope at the end of this one. It's the perfect song just to cap the movie you're watching and make you feel all the feels. So, like I said, it's both of those. Only Hope and Cry, I know by heart. I've seen the movie 40 times, and
wow,
it's like I'm a 6'5" black man, almost 300 pounds, and if you put Only Hope, I'm word for word.
Wow, nice.
Cry is the one at the end. Sorry, not Only Hope is the one there's like a recital scene. Only Hope is that one. Cry is at the end, and I know both of those word for word. Just I've seen that movie so many times, and I like Shane West hasn't been in anything else I like, but I mean he's the guy for me because he was in this, and Mandy Moore. I'm always going to remember her in this. So like it's the weirdest thing. I tried to watch what's the Mandy Moore show with the family. This Is Us. I could never watch it because I was upset. It's the weirdest feeling. Like I'm upset at Mandy Moore because she's not the character from the story.
You should be blank.
I don't. It's like it's weird. It's like I just associate that role with her so much. It's like you're not allowed to not be that because that person is real to me, you know. So
Yeah.
anyway, yeah,
That's actually one of the first romantic movies I ever saw as a
yeah,
when I was growing up. I think I was 12 or 13, and my dad said, you should watch this. He said, I know it's not your kind of movie, all right, but it's really beautiful. And I sat
yeah,
there and I was like, bet this will be stupid. This is a dumb romantic movie about people falling in love. And I cried.
yeah.
I was like 12 years old
It's,
and I was crying. It's
it,
beautiful.
it's it did it for me. Like I said, it left a huge impact. So gotta put that as my recommendation. So, but yeah, let's hop into the movie. The reason we're here, getting started on the actual Before Sunset movie. This is going to be a whopper for me as well. Like this, for different reasons, I put this in that category. We'll get into it later, but it's one of those movies that had a huge impact on me. So let's start off just by talking about nostalgia for this movie. Did this movie have a lasting impact on you, Vito? Did it like what do you think about when you think about this movie? Like what is your nostalgic feelings towards this movie?
I actually have a lot to say on this one in terms of nostalgia. I saw these three movies when I was in college, about 20 between 2011 and 2013. But I will restrict it to this one primarily because this is the one that this is the one that really touched me, and it didn't touch me this way when I first saw them. That would be the third one because it's hard not to watch a third one and just feel like your world ended a little bit. But this one is so quiet and sweet, and I think I was 18, 19 years old when I saw it. Definitely probably too young to be hearing about the problems of people as they got older and were together for a while and had been in love for a long time. And it really took me a long time of watching these movies, getting older myself, getting married, having children, to really put myself in their place. And my nostalgia is looking back at myself like 19 years old sitting in his bed. It's like sophomore year of college, and I'm watching Before Sunset on my laptop, and I just started it after Before Sunrise ended. And
Mm,
then it's over, and then I'm so sad that there's just these two movies that exist, and I don't know what happens next. Uh, it was a lot, but even more than that personal nostalgia. What was big for me was the character of Jesse. He actually reminds me a lot of my biological father. Uh,
mm,
the final choice, which occurs at the end of the movie, I'd like to circle back to this point, is something that made me cry with the parallels that I saw in my own life,
mm.
and is still very deeply profound to me even now. And so every time I watch it, just like how Jesse speaks in the very beginning of the movie about how he wants to write that book that takes place in the course of a single pop song as it carries him through his life, that's kind of
Yeah,
how I feel when I watch these three movies, specifically this one. Is I feel like I'm remembering every other time that I watched it and how old I was and what I thought then. It's like a constant rewatch for me.
yeah.
Uh, and that's really my nostalgia. This is a 5 star, one of my favorite movies of all time that I'm going to return to for the rest of my life, I think.
Whew. That is okay. So, all right. So let me open this up by saying when we were getting ready for this episode, you asked me if I wanted to push it back or if I was ready to do it now, and I responded by saying I'm having an existential crisis. I need to do this as soon as possible. um, so I say that because I saw this movie exactly one time, and I don't know if I can overstate how much of an impact it left on me. I'm gonna
Wow.
I'm gonna get into it in I don't know the spoiler section. I'm gonna get into it later, but it left a huge impact on me. This was probably 2010, 11 ish, because I remember knowing that Before Midnight was coming, and before I watched. I don't know. It's just fuzzy to me because honestly, I'm not sure because the movies were already a thing when I watched them. I put it like that because I think people already liked the first two and were looking forward to the third one, and it was
Mhm.
kind of people felt strongly about it, which made me go watch them. And I remember a gap between watching this one and the third one, so I assume it's going to be somewhere in the 2010, 11, 12 ish range or something like
So we
that.
saw it
But
at like the same time period.
yeah, but I'm a little bit older than you, so and
You love
at
to
the
remind me.
yeah, but I mean, at that time in my life, I was very much stuck on one person, and it was a it was the type of break up again, get back together again type of thing. And so the ending of this movie just kind of, it was a brick. It was a brick, and it really. I'll get into it later, but yeah, it was a thing. So my nostalgia for it left a huge impression on me. I love these movies altogether. I watched all three of them at once. I never needed to watch again because I knew the story. It was beautiful and blah 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 blah. Had to buy the box set. It was just very important to me to own this collection because I loved it so much. But there wasn't a need to rewatch it because the stories and the feelings it made me feel were so imprinted on me. So for this was the first time I've rewatched it in a decade, and so I had very strong feelings last week when we discussed the Before Sunrise because coming at it as a 33-year-old, you just see things entirely differently. You just you think you see things you didn't you may have not understood when you were younger. It's just you're a different person looking at different perspectives, doing the world differently. So I think my review is going to be so disjointed because this is a movie that is it's more of an emotional movie than it is a watching movie to me. So it's not going to be a normal just I thought this. This is one of those personal type films for me. But so yeah, rewatching this at my age, I felt differently. I remember tweeting, "Never rewatch movies you love," or something to that extent. Because watching this, it just I very much did not like Jesse's character in this in a way I don't remember in the past. I remember the ending, and the ending still is the ending, and that last 10 or so minutes is still like Lady Justice. If you got the scales, if you got those 10 minutes removed from this entire trilogy on one side and the 10 minutes on the other side, those scales are equally balanced because that the last 10 minutes in this movie is just you know it stands on it's incredible. But yeah, so I mean, leading up to that ending in this movie, I felt very much differently than I felt previously, and it kind of it made me feel things I wasn't prepared to feel, and it made me question things about life. So, just before we even get to the movie, restricted speaking like on a big picture nostalgia level, before I rewatched this movie, I would have said basically what you said. How well, not specifically, but just how it meant a lot, and now kind of towards the second half of what you're saying, I feel like I'm gonna have to as a person rewatch this again in 5 years, 10 years, because I see it so differently now than I saw it the first time I saw it that I'm curious. I want to know what's going to change about me when I watch it again in 5 years, 10 years, because I felt just so differently rewatching this one than I felt the first time. And it, you're cracking open this is going to be a fun episode. So yeah, moving on to, will we show this to our kids? Um, I already answered this last week, so I'll go first on this one. Very much yes, and I'm kind of doubling down on that now because the way I felt back then, it hit me like a ton of bricks, and rewatching it now, it hit me from the side like a ton of bricks, just for entirely different reasons. And so, like, I feel like I want to put that into my kids at the right age. Like I think we talked about last week. Um, Liz actually just helped my brain to decide on they got to be older. They got to be at least higher teens, maybe even out of high school, old enough to watch this differently. But they got to be a little bit older. But I want to show this to them at that ish age. So A, they can feel what I felt when I watched all three, and B, so they can do what I'm doing, watch it again years later, and dissect that. So yeah, that's my answer to showing it to my kids. What about you, Vito?
I think that's the only right way to go about it. If you're going to do it in a way that is really going to land with your children, really going to give them the punch that you got. And I would even go so far as to say, like, before sunrise, I feel has a really it's really engaging when you're younger. Like so many people that I talked to who saw it around the same time as I did, all like everyone says Before Sunrise is their favorite. And I go, well, when's the last time you watched it? They're like, well, I watched them all when I was like 18. I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So you don't know anything. They're like, yeah, I don't really like Before Sunset. I was like, yeah, you didn't really see it. Shut up. Go watch that again. Don't just be like, oh yeah, I liked it when they were talking about all their culture in Vienna. Like, no, go when they talked about their lives in Paris. That's Before Sunset. And I'm going to do both. I'm going to do Before Sunrise and let my kids live with that reality for a little while. Let them be young and cynical and like weirdly jaded, but also naive. And then come back in when you're just a little bit older and let's talk like adults. And then even further still, if they haven't watched it independently of me, which they really might, but I'm going to have to wait at least until they're like 2021 before we do that before midnight.
Yes.
Because I might have recovered at that point.
I'm very curious to see how I feel about rewatching that one because I remember it one way. I'll talk about it next week, but I'm very curious as to how I feel about it rewatching this one again. But yeah.
Yeah. I can't wait to hear.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That is, just leading up into whatever this conversation is going to be. We're going to be all over the place. Yeah. So, So let's get into it. You know why you're here, and I think I'm looking forward to having this conversation more than whoever's listening to this right now is understanding it. But yeah. So let's review the movie we came here to discuss.
My name's Steven. I'm a junior, and my question's for Will McAvoy.
As a news anchor, you've almost religiously avoided stating a political allegiance.
Sorry. That was the trailer from the newsroom.
Uh-huh.
My mistake. Vito was telling me he wanted to review something very important to him. I must have got my wires crossed. That was
like I wanted to hear about Will McAvoy talk about how America isn't the greatest place on earth, but it could be.
Sorry, I didn't realize you had that memorized. My bad. Yeah, I know it's your favorite. Sorry, my bad. I think Before Sunrise. Oh, yeah. Here's the trailer for Before Sunrise.
All right, think of it like this. Jump ahead 10, 20 years, and you're married. And only your marriage doesn't have that same energy that it used to have. You start to think about all those guys you've met in your life and what might have happened if you picked up with one of them.
Let me get my bag.
9 years ago, two strangers met by chance and spent a night in Vienna that ended before sunrise. They're about to meet for the first time since.
Hi.
Hello.
All right, that was from the trailer for Before Sunset. And before we even get into it, let's talk about that for a bit. The movie that I have in my memory, and again, the movie that I just saw, that trailer doesn't feel like the right trailer for that
trailer
movie.
is awful. Yeah. The trailer is terrible.
Yeah. It's what's the Holiday, the movie with Cameron Diaz?
Yes,
she like produces trailers. It sounds like a made up trailer from that movie.
Absolutely,
announcers talking like this in a world. It sounds like all the trailers of that era, but it sounds nothing like the movie
It's insanely dated. It seems so hallmarky. It seems very kitsch. It just seems like a dime store novel, And you're like, they met long ago, and now they're back. And you're like, no, we don't need to do this. But then again, how else do you sell this movie? Like, how do you make a trailer for this movie? It's just people talking.
Yeah, I don't know how you should have did it, but I know you did it wrong. I put it like that.
Agreed.
Okay, so actually getting into this movie. Premise of this movie, basically, it doesn't give anything away to say what it is. The first movie is two people will meet on a train. They get off and talk all night, and then they go their separate ways, and you wonder if they're going to meet again, and because they say they're going to meet up again in 6 months, and you're left feeling like they felt, just disconnected, and what's going to happen. This movie picks up 9 years later, saying they didn't meet each other 6 months later. He wrote a book about basically that night, and she at the very last stop in Paris where she lives, she comes to the book signing, and they talk again for a matter of hours, and that's this movie. I think both movies cover 12 or so, 8 or so hours, 12 hours, something like that. Just
This
a day
movie's
in
in
the
real time.
It is.
This movie's in real time. Before Sunrise is over course of it's 12
Okay.
hours, and this one takes place over an hour and 20 minutes.
Oh yeah, I mean, thinking about it, of course, it's in real time, just thinking about what happens. But yeah, so your first watch, how did you feel about this movie? What are your thoughts? And I guess we can kind of get into how you feel now about this movie.
Sure. The first time I saw it, I thought that it was quite possibly the most romantic thing I'd ever seen. It was so honest, but also it seemed like real love. It didn't seem like fake Hollywood love. The emotions weren't overplayed. There was no ticking clock on something that was like we'll be apart forever. It was like, no, I'll have to go back to the United States, but if we hit things off, maybe we can figure this stuff out. There was no like she's gonna die or like he's going into the army to go to war. There wasn't something super pressing that pushed everything into overdramatic territory. It was just actually two people
Well,
genuinely talking and falling in love.
there was a ticking clock technically on this one,
But it's not like it's the end of everything. He's not going to war and she's not going to go to the cancer ward. He's just going to go back to the States. They could see each other again now that they are
yeah,
not stupid kids and they can exchange information. and so that to me that was really new because when I first saw it, 18, 19 years old, I was not exposed to that kind of adult love, real love. And that was really revelatory for me. And the school that I went to, there's a lot of talking and everyone was always talking to each other. And the people who were dating you'd see them all taking walks around campus, all just talking.
Mm.
And this was very much in the spirit of that. And now, when I look back at this movie, I still love it. I think it's still a beautifully made movie that does make me feel some of the same things, but, we'd have to get into spoilers for it, but I like you feel differently about it. I still love the thing. But these are very real, well-drawn people who can be despicable and can do some bad things and can be very selfish. And that really drove its way home to me on this watch as well.
Yeah. I I guess I mirror that. The In my memory, this was the lovest of love stories, and this was the best movie. And I think I conflated the last 10 minutes with the rest of the movie. Rewatching it, you kind of there are things to pick apart, and there are flaws. And again, the spoiler section is going to be fun because again, Jesse's character without giving anything away, the last 10 minutes are both the most beautiful thing I've ever seen and um, deplorable
Yeah,
at the same time.
absolutely.
And honestly, I mean, I feel that and I don't. I'm I say that because I have to, but I also disagree with myself when I say it. So, I mean, I'll get to that when we get to it.
I'd love to talk to you about that point specifically because I
Yeah,
have a very, very specific kind of like memory that I associate with this movie. Actually, like I don't even know if we can get around it. How what's the quickest way that we can get into this discussion?
yeah. Like I said, I'm going to try to do some high level, and I'm going to try to do some. If you haven't seen this movie, I want you to get a feel for what's going on and understand it. But we're going to have to get to spoilers quick to really break this down because there's a lot to break down here. But yeah, so um, again, that's how I felt when I first saw it. I just thought it was amazing and beautiful and the best love story put to film. And on rewatch, honestly, I think the first one was better written. I think that is a better capital L love story. I feel like the first movie is, for lack of a better phrase, perfect. And I think this one is flawed. And I, because of my age and because of how I feel, the feelings it's making me feel, I don't know if it's bad writing or great writing. And I respect the movie for making me confused about that. If this would have been the first time I watched it, if this movie was stand alone, I would say it's not good writing. It's, full of flaws and, this character does this and blah, blah, blah. But because I've seen the other two movies, because I felt the way when I first saw it and I feel the way now, I think this is crafted, but it's intentional. It is, he had 10 years to write it. So, it's not something, like today's movies where you just come up with another script in 6 months and you spend the next year and a half shooting it. And, 6 months after that, you're editing and boom, here you go. There was plenty of time to work the script to be exactly what you wanted it to be. And I think the flaws may be intentional, but still just on a pure writing level, I think the first one just is a bit better.
I will have to throw a quick disagreement in there with you, because when I rewatched the first one to watch this one, I did not watch the third one.
Yeah, neither have I.
I just wanted to keep it, contained just my memories of the third one that I'm just completely disregarding. But the first one, when I saw it originally with my wife was like 5-star movie. And the first time I saw it, I was like 5-star movie. And then the second time I watched it again with my wife, we were both like, it's a little less. And I think it's a little less because I find Jesse and Celine super annoying in the first one. They're really irritating. And they're irritating in a very specific way because I've known so many people that were like them. And when I was watching it, I felt I was annoyed that I was having to watch these people for a while. And I did fall back into the story at a certain point, but it really took a while. And when Jesse comes up to her at the train, and this is like the third or fourth time I've seen it, but Jesse comes up to her on the train, tries to get Visitor to get off. I was like, don't do it. He'll be insufferable. And so that's why I'd say I just preferred the lack of like Jesse's so much less cynical in this movie than he is in the first one. And that cynicism in the first one seems really put on. It doesn't seem, but it seems like he knows it's put on. There's layers to this.
Yeah.
So I respect that it's there, but it wasn't enjoyable for me to experience.
Yeah, and I think we keep comparing this movie to the first and the third, and it's really difficult to talk about this one in a vacuum because of where it lies in the series and how much, the events before directly influence this movie, and there are clips from the first movie in this one. How do you feel about this movie as a standalone film? Do you think it works by itself, or do you need the other two movies to appreciate what this movie is doing?
Let me answer the second one first. I don't think that for either of the first two movies you need the third movie. I love the third movie. I don't think you need it for this story. I think it's a perfect. Honestly, the first one, if you had just made that, that is a statement in itself, right? The ending of like, will they meet up again in 6 months? Will they not? I don't know. And then for this one, if it's just a short story that's told all by itself, I think it's applauded for its bravery and not giving us a backstory for these people. I think they fill in a good amount of backstory, but I don't think that it functions completely by itself. I think it's like 80%, because there's a large portion of this where they're arguing about whether or not, a certain event occurred overnight in Vienna that is very important to both their characters, that goes on for about 10, 12 minutes. And if you don't have that and you're watching it cold, I think you're going to be kind of out on it. So I'd say that I don't think it's completely successful as a standalone, but it would be fascinating if it were.
Yeah. And
wait, did you share those thoughts?
Well, so I don't think this works by itself. I'll put it like that. Okay, so something Liz, Jesse's wife last week, Liz, she's her own independent person. I mean to refer to her as Jesse's wife, but something she said was the first movie is dangerous. And it's what made me decide that when I want to show this to my kids, I want them to be older. Because if you show that movie to a young, impressionable, 14, 15, 16-year-old girl, she's going to walk away thinking, oh, I got to find me a Jesse. I got to find a guy. He's so cool, and he's got the leather jacket, and he's in touch with his emotions, blah, blah, blah. But as a grown adult, you watch that movie and you see Jesse's, get away from that kid.
He's literally reading a book called All I Need Is Love.
Yeah,
right?
That's a flawed kid to be, to be infatuated with, and I think this movie on its own, basically it gives the wrong answer to the first movie, because those two do meet, after all that time, and they, they're together in this movie. I won't say how it ends, but well, I mean, they get together into because there's a third movie, so spoiler alert, they get together at the end of the movie. But so I think it's telling the wrong lessons about that first movie by this movie ending the way it does, especially as a grown adult watching this movie. And then I think the third movie, it's the missing piece that needed to make this all be one complete story. You don't really appreciate the story of this couple, of their life, of the many complicated layers of what love is, blah blah blah, without that third movie. I think this movie on its own, or this movie just combined with the first, I feel like it leaves the wrong lesson about the kind of decisions you should make. And like I said, we'll get into that in spoilers, but I really don't. I think you need that third movie to be the salt or the spice or whatever that evens out that sweetness flavor, So yeah, we'll get to that.
I might, yeah, we can get into it. But I just right now, I have not heard the Jesse and Liz talking about before sunrise, so that's all fun for me to hear. But in talking about before midnight, I think that might be true. I might grant that, but it's just so radically different from the first two movies, not only in content, but it also just how it looks and where they're at. Because the first one's Vienna, second one's France, third one's Greece, and those are way different cultures. And I think at that point, it's almost cruel to do that to your audience, and it's almost cruel to put these characters into this situation, and then even have the ending of it not fully 1,000% be a repudiation of the first two. It's a fascinating work. It's like if Before Sunrise is a cake and Before Sunset's a pie, and this is a steak. That's how I feel. But we should probably move on.
Yeah, I'll disagree, but again, I would have disagreed with a take about Before Sunset before watching Before Sunset again. So I was like, man, I don't know what I'm talking about. Let me watch it next week too. Then I'll know. But yeah,
same. I'll watch it and listen to the episode.
Yeah, there's so much to say, and I feel like this movie's just talking. It's talking about stuff that happened in the first movie, and it's adding to that first movie. So just trying to discuss this without spoilers is just talking in circles about stuff that you're not going to understand if you didn't watch the first movie, and you've already seen if you're listening to this. So we got to jump into spoilers. I mean, it just is what it is at the end of the day. If you haven't seen this and you've listened to this point, I apologize if we haven't been quite.
What are you doing? Though, seriously.
It's go watch this, go
come
watch
on.
it. And then from this point forward, we are into spoilers for Before Sunrise. Before Sunset.
You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
I just want to ask, do I look any different? I do?
A little skinnier.
Exactly.
She was a twig before, so it's like, oh my goodness, yeah. So
wait, no, you're saying I was fat? No, you said you were with a fat French girl. Gosh, I love her so. Okay, spoilers. So I wanted to wrap up the point that I began in talking about how I think Jesse's character is, how he's an asshole now. It doesn't take away from my enjoyment of this movie, but it's an added layer that's colored in now that I know this. When I was a kid, my biological father actually abandoned me and my mother, and my mother was single for quite a while till she met a really good guy. She married him. Later, he legally adopted me, and now they're still happily married with all of my siblings, all my, I guess, half siblings. But since I'm legally adopted, they're all just full on siblings. My last name got changed. My birth certificate got changed. And my biological father actually passed away a number of years ago when I was the same year I got married, actually. The point of that story being is that my biological father was very much like Jesse. He was very winning. He was very smart, very romantic and optimistic. And after he left me and my mother, he actually went to Paris, and he stayed there for a good long time, possibly to escape the child support that he needed to pay.
So this is a very it's hard for you to not watch this movie and kind of to hit you with a lead brick or whatever, because there's a lot of overlap to your life, and so you're looking at not only the romantic layers and the conversation layers, but the this is my life type layers, especially before midnight. But yeah,
and he loved Before Sunset and Before Sunrise. He loved them, and he liked to talk about how he had a connection to these.
Speaking of dangerous,
exactly.
Here's that danger.
And he wasn't a writer. He was a jazz musician, so equally unstable. And it was just, it's so weird watching these movies. And he'd send me pictures of the places that he'd gone to, and I recognized somebody. He'd been to Vienna. He had an apartment in Paris through which he could see the Eiffel Tower from there. He learned how to speak French and all this. And the final moments where Celine says, "You're gonna miss you." What?
We can't do that yet. We can't do that yet.
Well,
we can't. Okay. Okay.
When he says, "Yes, I know," all I see now is my dad saying, "I am cool with leaving my son with my wife so I can be with my fun new girlfriend." That's all I can see now, and it just, in a way, it kills me, because it means I can't enjoy this as much as I used to.
Yeah.
And in another way, it's like it's another layer, and it's nice to know that I'm still digging in and learning things about myself and about the things that I watch. And this movie was just a lot deeper. And I think that's why over the years, when people have been like, "Oh, Before Sunset, that's not the good one," I think from a very personal standpoint, I was like, and you just shut right up. You don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. See, the first time I watched this, I took away the dangerous, aspect of it. I saw that last two words being "I know," and that's the part that stuck with me. I'm not ready to get into the "I know" yet. So if you, for some reason, are listening to this and haven't heard spoilers, again, she says, they go back to her place. He's, got 10 minutes to leave with the chauffeur, or he's going to miss his plane. She goes, "Baby, you're gonna miss your train or plane or whatever it is." And he goes, "I know." And, so he stays. And, when I first watched it, I thought that was so romantic and so beautiful. And rewatching this, I saw the breadcrumbs he dropped that led to that moment, and it just felt so much dirtier, 'cause in my head, I remembered him being separated or divorced,
Oh, yeah.
That's how I remembered it being. But in here, no, he's still married. Like, he still has a wife and a child, and when they started, they got 45 minutes into their conversation till she brought it up. He never brought it up. And he goes, "Yeah, blah, 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 blah. I love my son and blah, blah, blah." And just the way he started talking about his wife and his unhappiness, I'm like, "Oh, you're dropping those breadcrumbs. You're trying to make it okay for her to cheat with you, even though you're still married." It's like and then she started talking about how unhappy she is with her relationship. And then he goes on this big speech about how he dreams about her, and he wakes up and sees his wife. And somehow that's supposed to make you feel empathetic for him for being, pining away about her. But no, you're literally laying next to your wife thinking about another woman. It's, not great, buddy, and it's just, there's so many of those moments like that where throughout that last, half hour leading up to that end, he's just dropping breadcrumb after breadcrumb, saying how unhappy he is, saying how he hasn't had sex in forever, and there's just a loveless marriage and blah, blah, blah. But it's like,
can I use the line? I have the line that he actually says, and it's really funny. Oh, yeah. Where is it? Well, at first he does the thing where he's like, "In the month leading up to my wedding, all I could think about is you. I think I saw you on the street." And she's like, "I live 2 streets over." And he's like, "Oh, how about that?" But he has that thing where he says, what is he, like, if someone is going to touch him, he's afraid he's going to dissolve into molecules, right? Like, he's so, like, pent up and angry and horny, he just can't handle it.
And that line is supposed to make her want to touch him. Like, I guess I feel like the movie was trying to give that vibe. You're like, oh, he's so lacking the emotional touch. I want to be that for him. But it's like, no, he's still married. I mean, he's got a wife, till death do us part. I know a lot of people don't have those views on marriage. I know, especially these days, and not so much back then, especially these days, people are a lot more cynical on marriage, and it's a lot more, oh, it's just a piece of paper, and blah 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 blah. But I mean, to me personally, like marriage is marriage.
It
It's
doesn't
like
describe my marriage at all. Yeah, no, it's till death do us part, man.
Okay, I was about to say that. No, mine's a piece of paper. I was like, oh well, okay. Well,
no,
it's
no,
really
no.
like that. Yeah,
It's complete. Yeah, this is.
yeah,
I can't just leave just because I'm not getting laid enough. Like
yeah.
that's not going to happen.
Yeah, and it wasn't even just the being late. He's trying to make it seem as if it's just we're not right for each other. It's like, does she feel like that? It's like, I just I pine away and I just think about blah 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 blah, and I feel like we used to love each other, but right now it's like, how does she feel about this? Does she know you're having these thoughts in Paris? Like, how did she feel about you writing that book and then going to, like, does she know that was a real thing? Like, it's like we just see him leaving this side of him. It just felt really gross to me in hindsight. You know what? I'm gonna do it. Let's we can get into other parts of this movie right now, but here we go. The last 2 minutes of this movie, not even 2 minutes, from when they went up the stairs, in which I do want to give a little call back. It was very beautiful. The first movie, they were in the record store, and they were playing the kind of romantic little song. And they were kind of giving each other the cutesy, I'm going to look at you, but I'm not going to look at you, but I'm going to look at you. We're not going to look at each other. I do want to give a call back because when they were coming up the stairs, it was that same exact vibe where nobody wanted to say anything because they both knew kind of what was going on right now. And nobody wanted to acknowledge it, so they kind of just looked at each other and looked at the cat, and we're just kind of a silent walk upstairs to my bedroom because we both know what the vibe is right now. So, but after that, she sings this song, and I felt, honestly, like I said, I'm just talking about these 10 minutes because it felt a little incongruous with the rest of the movie. How it is a very romantic, lovey, I'm singing about you type song that she didn't really. She spent the last hour saying how non-romantic she is now, and just that song just felt very differently. But so
one single night with you, little Jessie, is worth 1,000 with anybody.
Yeah, it's just like, where was that romanticism the last hour? But yeah, so so walking up the stairs, he's got that, it's kind of a playful, I'm going back to your place and maybe I'm just trying to sleep with you kind of look in his eyes. But once she starts playing that song, I mean, it's honestly kind of the most powerful look in any movie I've ever seen. Just the way he looks at her, it's just like, it's like this is what I'm talking about when leaving that impression on me. Because the look he gave her, I know he's an actor in a movie, but it completely took me out of it. I think I'm watching a human look at another human with absolute adoration in their eyes. Just the way he looked at her in that moment was powerful. It's like, this is the woman I've been pining for 10 years. I spent an amazing night with you, and I haven't been able to get you out of my mind. I've dated other women. I got married, but I'm here. I'm really with this woman now, and she's singing a love song to me. It's just the look in his eyes was absolute magic. But she, starts playing a little tune on the radio. She does a little jig, and she looks at him, and she goes, "Baby, you're gonna." It looks like you're gonna miss that train. And he goes, "I know," I know. I'm trying to do it justice.
It's a perfect line reading. There's no way you could say that better.
Yes, it's so for him. Here's the wrong lesson I took from that moment, and I say wrong in hindsight. I say wrong as a 33-year-old. I say wrong as somebody who watched the first half of this movie recently as an adult. But like I said, the first time I saw it, I took away from that, I know, as it defined my idea of what romantic love is. And I say that with all seriousness. Like, to this day, like, people define love certain ways. Some people think about it romantically, dictionary. If you were to distill my idea of what love is, it's that 2 seconds of him saying, I know. It's like word to God right now. And it's, It's him saying that I know I have a wife. I know I have a son. I know I live in America. I know, you know, I know that there are hills to climb. There, I know all of that, but I also know that I'm not getting on the train. It's like it's not even saying that I know this relationship is going to be perfect. It's not saying that 10 minutes from now we won't go our separate ways forever. It's not saying that whatever happens here, I want to get. It's just I've waited to be with you for 10 years. I've dreamed about this moment, and here you are. Regardless of what happens after this, I know I'm missing that train. And it's just, I feel like I'm not even doing it justice right now, conveying what's in my heart or whatever. It's just, it's so powerful. It's him saying that I don't know what's going to happen next, but I know my essence needs to be here with you right now. And that was just so powerful to me as a, however old I was when I watched it. And it's just, like I said, I was a hopeless romantic at the time. I was going back and forth with a girl, and it's like, and the relationship it wasn't great. We kept breaking up for a reason. We were definitely not meant to be together. But it's when you're watching a movie like that at that impressionable age, all the stuff leading up to that didn't matter. Him saying "I know" meant whatever happens, you are where I want to be, and you know would bridges may get burnt, what lies, it doesn't matter. It's, and that to me, that's that true belief in love, capital L love. And I, again, as a 33-year-old, it's a shitty thing to feel. I don't know, it's like I said, I hate myself for loving it, and I love myself for loving it, because it's so powerful of a thought. But it's like, whatever happens, this is what I'm doing, because you are my soulmate. You are my, there are people in, wrong relationships. And if you meet that person that you just know, it's like, I may have thought back then you were whatever. And, we fell apart, and maybe I convinced myself that love wasn't for me. And, you know, I'm just going to be with somebody for practicality reasons and blah, 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 blah. But you just looking at her, look at his eyes. It's like, it doesn't, I know, I don't know. I'm losing my words. Just like, I know. It's like having faith in God. There's thinking. There's some people are religious because they feel they should be, because they grew up in a religious household. There's some people that can't quote the Bible for anything, but it's like, I know that there is a God, and it's just the firm, rock solid knowledge of, I know that I am not making that train, because you are who I need to be. I don't know. It's just, like I said, I can't go on long enough, because those two words were, like I said, I cannot overstate how powerful those two words were for me. And so that's why this movie meant so much to me. And that's why, looking back, rewatching it, it's just like, you don't deserve to say those two words. It's like, how dare you be married to somebody else, have a kid across the world, like you, but at the same time, it's like, but he knows. So again, that's why I'm having the existential crisis I was having. That's why I'm so emotionally confused. It's just,
do you see inside Jesse like guile? Do you think that he's lying to get here? And he's like saying all this stuff because he needs to build up to this thing where he tells her he knows, but she has to accept these certain things first?
No, I think up to that point, I feel like he felt the way he felt about her, but he knew he was married, and he was just trying to talk himself into some pants. It's like, this isn't going to work. you live in Paris, I'm married, I have a kid, but I've been dreaming about you for so long that I gotta say what I gotta say so we can have this magical night. But I think as soon as she started singing, it stopped being that and started being, okay, well, I'm going to destroy my life for this woman. And I don't know, like I said, that's what I feel right now as a 33-year-old rewatching this. When I watched it the first time, that's not what I felt. When I watched it the first time, he's with the wrong woman. He's finally with the
Oh, of
girl he
course.
should be with, blah, blah, blah. But
That's what
watching
the
it
movie
right now,
wants you to kind of think at first blush, right?
yeah, watching it as an adult, I feel like I don't feel it was everything he said was genuine. I feel like it was a grown married man wanting to relive what he lived 9 years ago, and maybe I might just cheat on my wife because this is the woman. If I'm ever going to cheat on my wife with anybody, what I want to think about for the next 20 years is that time I re-met that girl that I met when I was a kid. And I feel like part of, again, this is me being cynical. Part of his, in my opinion, part of him was thinking that, but as soon as she started singing, it stopped being that and started being, wait, can I really? I wanted to have a piece of her because I've been dreaming about her so long, but am I really willing to do what it needs, what needs doing to actually be with this woman? Am I really willing to burn it all down to be with this woman that I've known a total of 2 days in my life? And I feel like by the time she said you're going to miss that train, the answer was yes. Maybe
I don't want to let Celine
yeah.
off the hook here too much,
Yeah.
right? I think they're both liars.
Oh, yeah.
They both lie, and then but the thing is though is they both tell the truth. They both lie about something and then come back and tell the truth about it, and then admit that they knew that they lied, which is really interesting. Like Jesse initially is like, "No, I didn't go to Vienna. Did you?" And then she's like, "No."
Yeah.
And then she explained, and then she's like, "What the fuck was your excuse?" he's like, "Okay, I actually did go."
Yeah. In my head, that was like half an hour, and I mean that was like an hour into the movie. In my memories, like at the very beginning, he said, "No, I didn't go." And then an hour later, we found out he did. But no, it's like 30 seconds later.
But then Celine is also lying about stuff, right? Because that's what I was referring to. This big deal that happened at the end of the movie of Before Sunrise is that they had sex.
Yeah.
And she pretends that she doesn't remember that for like quite a bit. And it's like really bugging him.
And I remember that part from this movie. And on my rewatch last week, I noticed that she had on an undershirt the whole time they're walking, throughout the night. And then it cuts away before you actually see if they have sex. And then the next morning, she doesn't have it on that undershirt. So I know at some point during the night, that shirt came off.
Yeah.
So maybe they were just some heavy petting, So in my head, I was like, well, maybe they really didn't have sex. And then I rewatched it. I was like, okay, so they did. So
yeah,
it was just,
but it definitely, I rewatched this Before Sunrise. And when she's like, no, we didn't have sex. I was like, wait, did they? I don't remember. But so she goes back on that. And then, Jesse, when he keeps asking like, why did why I wanted to write the book. And the first time he's like, I just really wanted to like remember that night and have it all written down in case I forgot. And the second time he says, so that you might come to a reading in Paris and I could walk up to you and ask, where the fuck were you?
Yeah,
that's like his second thing, but they keep going back and forth. And so I don't want to, as much as I think that what Jesse's doing is bad, I think that Celine is more than enough complicit in this.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. I mean, they're at the end. I feel like before that song, again, I feel like I've done a lot of criticizing of them up to that point, but still in my head, for whatever reason, I feel like they both believed it at the end.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and then it was very important that he said at the beginning that he went and she didn't. I feel like there could have been a whole movie of that, and maybe he did write a movie of that, but he felt it was better to continue it at this point. But again, as somebody who had their feelings broken at a young age, I feel like you can't overstate how big of an impact that had on his life. He fell in love with this girl in one night, broke, no money, he just had his heart broke by his girlfriend or whatever, flies back to America. A plane ticket from Texas to Paris is super expensive. So in that 6 months between when he went home and when he came back, he had to be hustling and busting his butt. And like I say, he still had to borrow money from his dad to get there. He's still a young, hopeless romantic waiting for that girl he met in Paris, and she doesn't show. and he walks around posting his number, and it's like they kind of brush over it in the movie, but that's a very,
It's super sad.
yeah,
That's like
it's
a huge
super,
bummer.
yeah, and it's super, not impressive, not in the good impressive, but like
Yeah.
literally impressive. It's impressing on his psyche, and it's got to affect him for years to come. So it's just
And it's very much in his character, the way he describes it, right? He said it pretty much sucked.
yeah,
You're like, that's very much downplaying it, sir.
yeah, and she and it, that experience, like I said, it's only been 9 years. I mean, I say only in the scope of life. 9 years and it isn't the most huge amount of time, but it really affected both of their lives, because she said it made her stop believing in love, and that every relationship she's been in, she kind of holds a piece of herself back, and she doesn't, she expects it to end, or what she was saying. And then he had his heart broken, so he kind of gave up on that romantic love. So that one day very much affected the next 9 years of their lives leading up to this moment. So again, still shitty cheating on his wife, but I feel like there's a piece of him that said,
Well, he says, I have, like, he just in connecting this with your other point, right? He says, I have this idea of my best self, and I wanted to pursue that, even if it might have been overriding my honest self. Right?
yes,
He's got these like competing things happening with him. It's like what you're saying with the I know, and then this love, and then the years all passing. He's become somebody, and now he's like, I don't like that person anymore. I want to go back.
His best self is somebody married with a kid and white picket fence, blah 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 blah. But his honest self came back to Paris and found that woman from 9 years ago, and he's throwing that grenade like whatever happens happens. So
Yep.
yeah, all right. I don't know. I've got my catharsis from what I wanted to say about this moment. But yeah, before we get into, actually, a thing I did want to mention. Are there any quotes from this movie? Anything that really? Because I feel like there were so many quotables from that first movie. Again, with that brings me back to the writing. I feel like the writing wasn't as up to par as the first one was. But do you have any quotes from this movie that really stuck with you, and anything you really want to repeat?
I've been trying to sprinkle them in, and to actually, to your point about what you were saying about not what is well written. The first one feels more like a movie than this feels like,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't say that in a qualitative way. I just mean the first one feels like a film, and this one feels much more like an experience.
Yeah.
It feels very natural. So I don't think that you would want really well written lines. Like, it's better if there's just moments where people have to come up with an example off the seat of their pants, and it's not a great example,
Yeah.
and you're like, I don't know, but I'm not saying it right, and then they go on like that. There's I've used a couple. One was that best self line, I think, is a really good line. There's some really good interactions, like when Celine asks, "So what's it like to be married?" You haven't talked much about that, and Jesse says, "I haven't. How weird."
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, but there's not really one line. It's back and forthing. There's Celine's line. There are so many things I want to do, but I end up not doing much.
Yeah.
And then let's see. The concept is absurd. The idea that we can only be complete with another person is evil, right?
Mm. But anyway, I need you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then, of course, memory is a wonderful thing if you don't have to deal with the past.
Yeah. Well, that should be a bumper sticker. Yeah. So I actually had two. I'm glad you didn't steal any of mine, but one that kind of it was beautiful to me when he was telling that story about the gunman who couldn't bear to blow up the Eiffel Tower and all these other famous landmarks, and she goes, "Is that true?" And he says, "I don't know. I like the story though." It's like, because that really spoke to how he's become the romantic. Again, in that first movie, he was much more cynical. He was much more to mirror another mirroring part when he when they met the poet in the first movie, and he wrote that poem off his head with the milkshake line, and when they walk away, he goes, he probably just has a story,
put the word in,
just puts a word in. And then mirroring that in this movie, when she sings that beautiful song to him, he kind of jokes and says, you just say every guy's name, you just insert Jesse or whatever into the same song every time you sing it for another guy. So I just like that mirroring aspect. But yeah. And then my last quote, he says, I remember that night better than I remember entire years. And that stuck with me as well because, I mean, I've had situations like that. I've had moments where I can remember it with crystal clear clarity, and there are months and weeks, and they just kind of blend with each other. And but there are moments that just you don't necessarily realize you're experiencing a moment when you're living through it, but looking back on it, it's just that was a defining moment in my life, and I remember it like it was yesterday. And there are some weeks, months, years where you're just going to work, plugging in, doing the same thing day in day out, and just it's gone. So yeah, it really stuck with me as well. Just kind of defining. It really just cements how. Again, like I said, I know I'm contradicting myself when I say it, but it really just cements how romantic he is, and how he is the type of person that could potentially set his life on fire for that one true love or whatever. And I felt like the first movie was more poetic with the writing, more Aaron Sorkin-y, more perfect, dialogue to make that movie perfect. And I do complain that this movie did feel rougher, and I felt it was inorganic because a lot of the lines were he was specifically crafting lines to show that he is in an unhappy marriage or whatnot. But it's
and we
real.
disagree about that.
Yeah.
We disagree about that. I don't think he's necessarily crafting them. I feel like he's being stupidly sincere, which is funny.
I felt like he was every setup was to knock down the fact that he was unhappy. Just so you know, if I throw myself at you, it's cool because I'm not happy. Just so you know, So, but yeah, again, it's not as movie romantic. It's not as beautiful on the paper, but as you are an example of, that kind of stuff happens in real life, and it's not necessarily the most poetic, beautiful thing, and it does leave a trail of fire behind you, but it happens, So, yeah. So, before we wrap up here, any final thoughts on Before Sunset?
Yeah, I have a final line. It's when Celine says, "Men go out with me, we break up, and then they get married. And later, they call me to thank me for teaching them what love is, that I taught them to care and respect women." Jesse says, "I think I'm one of those guys." And Celine says, "I want to kill them. Why didn't they ask me to marry them?" I would have said no, but at least they could have asked.
Yeah.
And just the final thoughts that I have about this movie are just...
I just wanted that's the prototype for Katherine Heigl in 27 Dresses. Just wanted to throw that there.
Oh yeah, it totally is. Yeah. Yeah, like 3 years earlier. This movie will always be important to me, not only for nostalgic reasons and looking back on my own life, but also it captures a very specific way I feel about romantic relationships and about friendships even. And I find it a beautiful well of creativity and honesty and originality that I want to keep going back to. And when we started doing this podcast, I was very, very excited to be on this episode. I wanted this one really badly, mostly because I actually wanted to interact with you, as you felt so passionate about Lee as well. But as the days grew shorter to when we were doing this, I found that I just kind of had less and less to say, which is really surprising because I've spent so many years of my life talking about this movie in particular. And I hope, my hope is that when the listener listens to this episode, that I expressed something that touched somebody, because this movie is really important to me, and I'm not sure if I've made that clear enough. But yeah, that's kind of my final thought is this is one of the most important movies in my life, and I didn't know how to talk about it. And I just hope that someone out there enjoyed it.
Yeah, this was an absolute mess for me. I kind of blabbed and garbled myself through most of it because I didn't know how to say. And again, and sorry, I was thinking about Good Luck Chuck, not 27 Dresses. It was because literally the premise of the movie is that every guy she dates, after they date, he finds love in his life. So I don't know why I said 27 Dresses, but
because she's 27 times a bridesmaid.
Yeah. Anyway, just to clarify, I don't want the angry emails that nobody's going to send. But yeah,
you didn't recognize Dane Cook enough.
Yeah, but same. I don't have any last thoughts. I want to have philosophical moment for a second, just to appreciate what movies can do and what movies are. Because, like I said, I was very much looking forward to this conversation because, like I said, I'm right hand to the Bible. That those last two words, I know it just to this day, it's imprinted on what love is to me, and a movie did that, So, and like I said, and not only that, but these three movies together just teach me so many things about life and love and, marriage, especially the third one. It's like, there's just, I appreciate movies for being this. That's why I have this podcast, so I can have these kind of conversations, Sometimes it is just, hey, let's talk about a movie that came out this week so I can talk about it. And sometimes it's me going on for 15 minutes about two words that meant so much to me. So yeah, movies can do that. I'm very appreciative to be able to have this conversation. And thank you to the trio from Not Your Father's Movies for indulging me on this. But yes,
this is exactly what we wanted to do this though for is that these movies that touch people, that touch us, that change us. I don't know how they can't be dad movies. They made these dads. Like without Before Sunset, I would not be the dad I am today, for better or worse, and might not actually exist. So it's that's why we did this podcast anyway, and for My Movie Fix and for Not Your Father's Movies to collide in this way, this beautiful like cohesion, it just makes so much sense to me.
Yeah. And what a beautiful setup for the transition to the big question of the day. Is this or is this not a dad movie? Vito, is this a dad movie?
Yeah. Yeah. Flat answer. Yes. Yes, because it's this dad's movie. Because it's so important to me that when a movie gets me on a really fundamental level, I have to ask the question, do I want my kids to see this from my hand or not? And sometimes I've answered not because I felt like it was giving away too much of myself. Like, I will never show my kids, as important as that movie is to me, The Master from Paul Thomas Anderson. Yeah. Never going to do it. Never going to do it. But that's my movie. That's for me. This is the movie, though, that I can show them. These three, as they get older and increase in understanding, that I can show them some very important parts of myself and my history and where I came from when I was watching these, how me and their mother felt watching this fight, this ongoing conversation on the screen, and how much it paralleled our own lives. It was such a big deal when Before Midnight came out. It shook the world, at least in my little community. Yeah. That's all anyone was talking about. Everyone was like coming back and like crying. And when Before Sunset, when I showed that to my wife, the long conversations that we had about where we both had come from and what this meant, it's foundational. I can't talk about it enough. For this dad, it's a dad movie. And, I don't know what the other guys are going to say about their movies, but, they do them.
I'm going to keep it a secret what the other two said. You have to find out and listen to the episode. For me, I'm saying the same thing I said last week, and it's absolutely yes. And again, it's actually interesting because it's yes for different reasons. Well, similar but different reasons, because my definition of what a dad movie is different than theirs. Again, my definition of a dad movie is the movie you come downstairs, you walk into the living room, and your dad's asleep on the couch watching this type of movie.
But be honest, sir. Would you be sleeping during this movie?
I mean, theoretically, yes, but no. Especially not now, So, I mean, yeah. But I would show this to this is a dad movie because I want, it's important to who I am as a person. I put it like that.
Yeah.
And it's something I want to show to my kids to impact them, maybe not the way it impacted me, but to have an impact on their lives. And I want them to see the vigor or passion in which I showed them this movie, so they'll know that this is a part of me. And I don't know, it reminds me of the question you asked actually on your podcast on the anniversary episode, what movie do you want your kids to associate with you? And I feel like this is on that level. I really, again, Fifth Element is my, that's Dad's movie. He loved that movie. But when I think of the serious type of big, life with a capital L, sometimes shit gets real. Sometimes it's, I want them to think of these movies in a dad wanted us to watch these type of way, and yeah, so that's why it's a dad movie to me. Not necessarily just because I want them to see it or blah, blah, blah. I want them to know that this movie is a part of me. This movie specifically. Like I said, all three in general, I do want them to experience the the pattern, the path of these three movies together, so they can kind of understand life in a big picture way. But specifically, this movie because of what it meant to me. So yes, very much this is a dad movie. All right, before we get to our send off, you can find My Movie Fix podcast wherever podcasts are found. You can find you can email me at mymoviefixpodcast@gmail.com. If you had similar thoughts, feelings, vibes, I want to know. Like I said, this is a personal episode to me. So if you have personal, thoughts with this type of movie, I just, like I said, it meant a lot for me to share this and have this episode. So if you have similar type vibes, write in, let me know. I love to read that kind of stuff. You can find My Movie Fix on YouTube. You can follow me on Instagram at My Movie Fix Pod. Vito, where can the people find you and Not Your Father's Movies?
They can find Not Your Father's Movies and on Facebook. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. Search Not Your Father's Movies. We have our own website, nyfmovies.com. Email us at notyourfathersmovies@gmail.com. Interact with us really anywhere that you find us. We'd like to keep monitored. We love getting emails from people, requests, stories. Just to echo what Sirr said, this was very personal for me too, and I'd love to hear who's been affected by this. Or if our episode affected you in some way. Did we inspire you to think about something in a new fashion? Please tell us. I would love to hear more about what it meant, what it meant to all of you. But yeah, that's us here. I got nothing else.
All right, so here we end every episode like the same way. We like to give you something to keep with you. I like to recommend something completely non-movie related, something that brought us a little joy during the week. I actually completely ripped it off from the DLC podcast, The Parting Gift, but I really like the idea, so I'm sharing that as well. Just something we can share with you that you can enjoy in your weeks that may bring you a little joy as well. All right, so Vito, what do you have for the folks?
Well, I got this little thing here. It's pretty fun because you did this to me the last time I was on your show. It was pretty fun when you did it. You're like, Vito, what do you have to recommend to the folks? And I was like, oh, this biography of Steve Jobs. It's really good. And you're like, yeah, well, I had a daughter. So, Sir, I had a daughter. All right. I have a brand new 3-week-old daughter, and she is amazing and incredible. And she poops a lot. This is the major sticking point in our relationship. But apart from that, just 1,000% recommend. Love her very much. And she's brought me a lot of joy and has made me remember what it's like having a young baby in the house. It's been a long time. And I do love it again now that I'm back in the groove. But my little daughter is the best thing I got going for me right now. Indeed. So have fun recommending whatever it is you're going to recommend. But
well, I was split between two. So I'm gonna say what it was, but then I'm gonna say my real one because you made me feel all emotional. But yeah, so one, my Instagram bio says "This is water." A lot of people have said something to me thinking I was talking about the David Foster Wallace speech, which is great. I actually rewatched that, and it's like, yeah, it's very
It's really good.
Very memorable commencement speeches. I'm not a huge David Foster Wallace guy. I know he's important in literature, but I've never read Infinite Jest because it's just not for me. But I say that because it actually is from the movie Soul, the Jamie Foxx movie. Disney is it Disney Pixar whatever just came out? I believe 2020. Yeah, but yeah, it's actually from Soul, and I in the movie, basically he spends the whole movie trying to be a jazz musician because he's wanted to be a jazz musician all his life, and he finally does it. At the end of the movie, he plays with the band, and he feels the magic in his hands, and he gives an amazing performance. And after the show, he comes outside, and like the main singer lady next to him is next to him, and he goes, I thought I'd feel different. I thought I'd feel more because I finally got what I've been chasing. And she tells a story about how there's a young fish swimming, and he goes up to an older fish, very similar to the David Foster Wallace sword, but a little different. He goes, I'm looking for the ocean. I heard so much about the ocean. I really want to go see the ocean. It's my dream to see the ocean. And then the old man says, you're in the ocean. He goes, this is water. and then she goes, and then that was the end of the story. And it's just, it meant that little, the movie was okay, but that kind of stuck with me. It's just like, don't lose the forest for the trees. You're living the life, like I was speaking about earlier there, you may not know you're living the moment while you're living it, but this is, these are the moments. This is your life, so don't miss the forest for the trees. I know I said I wasn't going to say that, even while explaining what I wasn't going to say. But the one I am going to choose this week, I guess I have to put both now that I said both. But
cheater.
Yep, a little bit. So just I was sentimental about it, but I didn't. I try to make the parting gift something that other people can share with as well. But so you got the David Foster Wallace speech. Go ahead and enjoy that. You got the This Is Water. So I'm giving this from me. My son's just been. He's been growing up, and it's making me feel a way, and it's just seeing him become a little person. He's 2.5 now, and it's just, I don't know, I saw a picture of him the other day wearing my shoes, and he just had this big smile on his face, and I'm at work, and it just, I don't know, it messed with me a bit, and actually went to go pick him up. My mom babysat him for a day. We went over there, and I was in a different room, and he brought me he's got like a little play phone over there where he can watch YouTube and stuff. He brought it to me, and he asked me to open it, but it was my mom's phone. I didn't have the password. So I go, he calls her Nunu. So I go say, ask Nunu for the password. And it's just, I don't know how to explain why it stuck with me so much, but he looked at it. He goes, okay, ask Nunu for the password. Ask Nunu for the password. He started walking away, and the whole way he's going to my mom, I hear him saying, "Ask Nunu for the password." I don't know why am I like I'm over here about to cry. Oh my goodness, I don't know. It just him. I don't know. It's just the mental level you have to be at to. It's just the next. It's a progression. You're no longer just like a baby. It's like now you're having complex thoughts. Now I have to repeat this to myself because I need to remember this. Ask Nunu for the password. Ask Nunu, and the whole time he's walking away, I don't know. It just it messed with me. It stuck with me. It's like he's getting older. It just I don't know. I don't know how to translate that into a parting gift for you guys, but
enjoy it. Yeah. Go ask your Nunu for the password.
Yeah, Vito came with I had a daughter, so I was like, okay, I can't say This Is Water.
I have kids too.
Yeah, so
it's a lovely story.
Yeah, it was just, I don't know, I don't know how to translate that, but it was beautiful, and that's my moment I want to share with you guys. So that's the end of the episode. You've been listening for an hour and a half of us talking about this movie, so it meant a whole lot. So
a lot more than that.
Yeah. Yeah, if you stuck with us all this way, I very much appreciate it. And that is it. Again, I am Sirr, and you are. And this has been the My Movie Fix / Not Your Father's Movies episode.